Hi, this is Samantha Clark, and this is my presentation on reading and writing in the ELA classroom. This will cover both Beyond the Five-Paragraph Essay by Kimberly Hill Campbell and Christy Latimer, as well as Gallagher's Deeper Reading. So if we're taking reading from both books, there are a lot of similar things that the authors discuss, but different ways they go about them and different ways that they suggest that they are implemented. So if we see both sets of authors, so Gallagher on one end says to read aloud to improve literacy and then to pass it over to the students. Campbell and Latimer say something similar. Read aloud to model for the students, to show them how to analyze as you read. So while you're reading in the classroom, we do this in my classroom, say you're reading and you come upon a word the students may not know, you take that moment to explain it to the students. Or if you come upon a moment that has a lot of imagery, you point it out. You may ask the students, what device is being used here? They respond, oh, is it personification? Is it imagery? You say, yes, it's imagery. Why is it imagery? And we show them how to analyze this excerpt. Gallagher, of course, it's called Deeper Reading. He talks about not just surface reading, but getting in there and analyzing as we read, looking at how the author put a text together. Campbell and Latimer say something very similar, but they do it from the perspective of reading as a writer. So when you're reading, you're preparing to analyze what you're reading there. So you know ahead of time, I'm going to be writing an analysis about symbolism. So as I'm reading, I'm looking for symbols. So in Life of Pi, oh, we're discussing water again. What does water symbolize here? And that way you can open up a discussion. Both books talk about annotating. Gallagher talks about annotating to deeper understanding of the text, to point out things we notice about the text. Campbell and Latimer are very similar, but they expand on it even towards the response. So even from the beginning, oh, right here, put an asterisk, this is water symbolism. And an annotation there, we're modeling, oh, water symbolizes God here. So very similar, but slightly different. Gallagher emphasizes collaboration. So as we read, students discussing with each other, talking about the text, and coming up with ideas. He values collaboration because one student may come up with an idea that another student may not have. And then they're able to exchange ideas and grow ideas. He also says to model. So model, analysis, and inference, similar to how Campbell and Latimer talk about the read aloud. So Gallagher says that students need a little bit of a nudge on how to infer. They may not have ever done this before. They may have just read surface for plot and for content, but we need to teach them that everything an author does is purposeful and inferring meaning behind every single thing that is written. He says to utilize graphic organizers. We can compare and contrast characters. We can begin to analyze with a graphic organizer in a way that students understand more. At our levels, we may be able to just do this, but it is much easier, especially at first, for students to understand concepts like comparing and contrasting when they lay it out in front of them. Also, be wary of overteaching. So if the major symbol, major theme of a book is already fulfilled, what really is the purpose of reading an entire book? If halfway through the book, students understand symbolism, they understand imagery, they understand where the plot's going and how the foreshadowing works. So what really is the point of spending 3 months reading a 300-page book? So being purposeful about our books and the literature we're choosing is not to waste our students' time. So furthermore, Campbell and Latimer discuss we need to develop responses throughout. So when we're developing responses, we're doing that annotating, we're specifying in our margins. We're thinking about what we're going to write at the end. I missed this here, but both authors emphasize rereading. Gallagher's book specifically says during the first reading, during the second reading, during the third reading. Campbell and Latimer discuss the importance of this in missed steps. So the first time maybe students are just discussing inference. They're just trying to infer things about the text. They're trying to get the subtext. When we're rereading or rereading, we're clarifying ideas. We're even looking for more devices to analyze. So again here with choosing appropriate texts. So this goes along with Gallagher's Be Wary of Overteaching. Sometimes we might want to choose a shorter text for what we're teaching. If they're writing an argument, they might not need to read a 200-page nonfiction book about a perspective of low-income populace in America. They might only need to read an article about it and then use that as a model for an argument. And tap into background knowledge. Always, always, always use texts that students are interested in, that students will understand, but are at that zone of proximal development so that they are being challenged. And for writing. So Gallagher, this book is deeper reading. He did have the different book on writing that we read, but specifically for this one, he says to model writing. In the classroom, students need to see writing to actually achieve academic writing, modeling analysis, teach to organize. So we saw that a little bit with talking about the graphic organizers. You need to teach students how to organize an essay because they've never done it before. We'll see that Campbell and Latimer have a huge opinion about this one. And then leading to meaningful response. So we don't just want a response. We want a response that students will be passionate about, will be encouraged to dive deep into. So we want to connect with the world, maybe do a compare and contrast with a nonfiction about today's world, today's problems. If we're talking about Life of Pi, since that's what we're reading right now, that's what I'm talking about. We're talking about religious conflict. Maybe we can bring that into what's happening right now in the real world. Why do different religions fight with each other when they're all supposedly worshiping the same God? So connecting it to the world, connecting it to something that students know and care about. And letting students hypothesize. They can't just be all of your ideas. You need to stop to let the students ask questions. Let the students formulate their own understandings and create their own ideas. And always keep high expectations. No matter how hard something is for students, we want them to know that we expect them to succeed. So Campbell and Latimer, the book is called Beyond the 5-Paragraph Essay. So yes, they talk about models and mentors. So using mentor texts, modeling writing for them. And their big argument is that deep thinking is greater than formula. So Gallagher's deeper reading kind of connects with this. We see that deep thinking, so we want students to start to get that metacognition. We want students, their gears to start turning before they're stifled by a structure, which is totally understandable. We don't want them to see the formula and be scared by it. Kind of like in math, if we see the quadratic formula, it's a little scary, but if we start with a graph, students might understand a little more. You see the whole graph in front of you. It's a little different than seeing that quadratic formula. So structure comes last is the big thing. So during that revision is when students are piecing together puzzle pieces from their writing. I've been trying to implement this in my classroom because students stop and they get really scared to write an essay. They're like, I don't know how I'm going to write a whole page about this. I say, just start writing. You can go back and put in quotes later. Just get your ideas down on the paper. Then use language to explore. So we don't want to stifle with, oh no, this is specifically what you're talking about. Let them explore and connect with their language. And encourage questioning. So this is very similar here to let students hypothesize. We want students to question. I mean, they're already questioning our motives. We want them to start questioning the text. And then teach to gather and analyze evidence. This was kind of a point of contention in my classroom recently because my guide teacher just told them to find quotes. We had a whole session for finding quotes for a time writing, but they didn't necessarily understand what was most important about the text that was relevant for writing. So I saw a lot in the essays that students were kind of pulling an example of, oh, Pi was named after a swimming pool. I think every student had that quote I was named after a swimming pool. But this doesn't necessarily show the relevance of the symbolism of water. It just shows water. So we need to dive a little deeper now in what is a more appropriate quote for an analysis versus like an explanatory essay. So this has been my presentation on reading and writing in the ELA classroom. I'm definitely going to use these books for scholarship for my TPA since I am writing it earlier than I should. So thank you so much.